Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. November 21st, 2017.
And back we are. Good to have you with us. 1:05 in the afternoon. Charlie Rose at CBS, now fired. Not just suspended, but fired from his work at 60 Minutes, his work at CBS Morning News. That is done. And it's over. According to CBS News President David Rhodes, a short time ago we terminated Charlie Rose's employment with CBS News, effective immediately. This followed the revelation yesterday of extremely disturbing and intolerable behavior said to have revolved around his PBS program. Despite Charlie's important journalistic contribution to our news division, there is absolutely nothing more important in this or any organization than ensuring a safe professional workplace, a supportive environment where people feel they can do their best work. We need to be such a place. End quote from David Rhodes, the CBS News president. So that's that. Well, we turn to another legal matter at this point, and certainly that one is because he was fired over actions that are arguably illegal in terms of sexual harassment, sexual intimidation, and the workplace environment being hostile for those 8 women who were working for or with Charlie Rose. Harry Miette is an attorney. He is the Vice President of Legal Affairs and Chief Litigation Counsel at Liberty Counsel. They do a lot of litigation from a conservative point of view, and we are delighted to have him with us because there is a case involving an individual who basically outed Planned Parenthood and all of the scandal, the grotesque work of selling fetus parts, human body parts from fetuses to make money. Absolutely incredible. And so Sandra Susan Merritt is now asking the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to basically uphold California law and protect her First Amendment rights, and then order the trial court in her case to dismiss the Planned Parenthood 15-count civil lawsuit against her. Mr. Miette, thank you for being with us. How are you?
Hey, great to be with you today.
It's good to talk to you. Now, let's get the background on this. What did the young lady do that caused the ire of Planned Parenthood, which is fine with me, by the way. Anytime you can ire Planned Parenthood, I'm delighted. But what did she do?
Well, she's young at heart. She's actually a 64-year-old grandmother, one of the most courageous women in America, if you ask me, because for about 3 years, she put her life, her family on hold. She assumed the identity of someone in the abortion industry and went deep inside the bowels of the Planned Parenthood organization. When she was among them and within them, they candidly discussed with her their willingness to profit from the trade in human baby body parts. The entire nation was shocked a couple of summers ago when the videos that she helped to produce came out and showed how over a lunchtime salad, the executives of Planned Parenthood were haggling over the cost of baby body parts.
Well, not only that, I remember that lunch, I have to mention this, when that condescending Planned Parenthood executive was talking about, I believe, whether it was a Jaguar or some other fashionable automobile that she was going to have, basically as a result of the financial profit from these actions of selling these body parts.
The famous quote is, "I want a Lamborghini."
There it is, Lamborghini.
Not
a, now, all due respect to Jaguar, it's a Lamborghini.
That's right. Now, to be fair, I don't think she was saying I'm saving up to buy a Lamborghini, so I better do as many abortions as I can. It's actually a lot worse than that. She said that in the context of the haggling over the pricing that Planned Parenthood would receive for the aborted baby body parts. And that's important because Planned Parenthood is claiming, look, we don't profit from these body parts. We just give them away for science, and if they throw a couple of bucks our way to offset our costs, that's not profit. That's not illegal profiting. Well, you have their officers and directors and high up people on tape saying, I don't just want a little couple of bucks thrown my way. I want a Lamborghini, meaning I want top dollar for, the little hands and feet and hearts and brains of the babies that we abort each and every day.
All right, so let me get the law straight here. So the law would be that this organization, if a baby as a fetus is aborted while still in the womb, then the body parts can be given away and it's not a crime. Is that correct?
Correct. But if you seek to profit from those baby body parts, that is a crime.
No, I understand. I just want to. But if they say, look, it cost us $50 out of pocket here at Planned Parenthood to do this. So if they got $50, it probably wouldn't rise to the level of a crime. But if you start talking about a Lamborghini, now you're talking about a crime.
Right. And also, the other thing that's quite illegal, without a doubt, is altering the abortion procedure in such a way as to maximize your profit from these parts. So on tape, these abortionists are caught saying things like, well, if you're interested in having an intact cranium, I can crush below at the neck, or I can crush here at the heart. I can do what you need me to do to get you the top-level specimens for the top-level dollar to earn that Lamborghini from you.
That's grotesque.
Very grotesque. I hope your listeners aren't eating lunch right now, because these are things that Planned Parenthood would have rather continued to do in the dark, things that have no place in a civilized society, much less funded by American taxpayers like you and I. Susan gave up her life for 3 years, went inside, got this evidence, caught Planned Parenthood dead to rights, and came out with this evidence, should have been treated like a heroine, like one of the most courageous women in America, which she is.
Now, look, as an attorney, let me ask you, just a point about this. I assume you reviewed the tapes, audio or video or both. Do you believe that those reproduction of the conversations in court demonstrate, even I guess on a criminal standard, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Planned Parenthood executives or some people at Planned Parenthood committed crimes? Is it clear from those tapes?
Absolutely, no question about it. Dead to rights, they're caught violating the law, and they should be criminally indicted and punished to the fullest extent of the law. Now, interestingly enough, Planned Parenthood says, well, the videos were doctored, highly edited videos, as if somehow Susan could make these abortionists say the things that they said and put them on tape. But that's what they said. And to prove their claim that the videos were doctored, they hired a research company. I'll give you one guess, and if you can't guess, I'll tell you who that company was that they hired.
That Planned Parenthood hired?
Yes, to discredit these videos. It's a name you've heard about. I'll go ahead and help you out.
I'm going to say I would say Fusion GPS.
You're right. Fusion GPS, the same firm that attempted to discredit our president.
And I didn't know that, by the way. I got to take credit for that.
Good job. Fusion GPS comes out and says, "Oh yeah, these are heavily edited videos." Well, the videos, what Susan and the people she worked with did, they took some of the videos and they cut out the parts where they go to the bathroom or they eat lunch, things that are not relevant. They cut out, and so they presented highlights of the video, so you don't have to watch 12 hours to get to the juicy part. But in fairness for all involved, they said we're going to do that with the highlights, but then here is the entire unedited video footage that you can, if you want to watch us, going to the bathroom, you can, but you don't need to. So it's like they've got nothing to hide. They released the entire tape in addition to the highlight footage. And somehow Fusion GPS says, well, these are highly edited.
Well, their credibility on a scale of 1 to 10 is about -6.
I would say so.
They've taken the fifth. They've already pled the fifth on the Hillary Clinton Russia case. So I mean, it's Hillary Clinton that had collusion with Russia.
Yeah, these are crooks helping crooks, for a lot of money at that.
All right, so now let me ask this. Was anyone prosecuted from Planned Parenthood about this? The story faded out after a while, but were there any prosecutions?
No, there have not been any prosecutions to date. There have been a few states that have decided to cut off the state funding to Planned Parenthood as a result, and there has been continual talk that the FBI might be criminally investigating Planned Parenthood. But as you and I sit here today, 2 years later, no one at Planned Parenthood has been arrested or fined in connection with these atrocities.
What is I know there's 15 counts Planned Parenthood filed against Ms. Merritt. Without going through all of them, what's the fundamental point Planned Parenthood says was a civil violation of their rights by Ms. Merritt? What did she do that violated their rights?
Sure. Well, first of all, I should mention that in addition to filing the civil case that we're fixing to talk about, Planned Parenthood also called upon the people in government that it funded, thousands of dollars from Planned Parenthood to the campaign of the California Attorney General, for example, called upon him, and he obliged them, and he filed some criminal charges against Susan in California. There were criminal charges filed in Houston. We beat back the ones in Houston. We're continually fighting the ones in California. All that to say is that now Planned Parenthood is releasing its full arsenal against Susan Merritt for having exposed them. In the civil case that Planned Parenthood filed, 15 counts, the crux of it is that Susan recorded confidential communications without obtaining the consent from the bad guys. So
all right, let me ask you a question about that, because some states are two-party consent, some states are one-party consent. Is California a one- or two-party consent state?
California is a two-party consent, meaning both parties to a confidential communication have to consent. Now, confidential communication, the courts have said when a communication takes place in a crowded restaurant, and can be overheard by others, it is not a confidential communication. So these are the communications that we're talking about here, filmed in public restaurants, waiters going by, people gathered about, not confidential. And in fact, Cecile Richards, the CEO of Planned Parenthood, was testifying in Congress, and she said under oath that she was furious when she saw these videos came out. Furious, first of all, with her underlings, her staff, because they engaged in these sensitive communications in, quote, non-confidential settings, end quote. So
she inculpated herself and admitted that this was not confidential.
Correct. Admitted what the case law plainly says, which is
wouldn't that be an advantage in your case to?
Well, I would go so far as to call it a silver bullet. Look, Planned Parenthood knows that it cannot win this case. However, they have millions of dollars and thousands of lawyers at their disposal, so they're intending now to punish Susan with the mere fact of a 15-count federal lawsuit. So the idea is whether they win the case or not, if they can drag Susan through the courts for several years and cause her to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, well, that ought to be punishment enough, even if at the end of the day their case is dismissed. That's the real strategy here.
Now, do you anticipate what's the stage of the case at the present time? When do you believe it'll be resolved?
Well, so we filed in California what's called an anti-SLAPP motion. California, like many other states, has a law that protects its citizens from what are called strategic lawsuits against public participation. Lawsuits that are designed to stifle First Amendment grounds just by their mere existence. They don't have merit, but they're intended, the process is meant to be the punishment. California law says if such a lawsuit is filed, the defendant, in this case Susan, can challenge the party's ability to come forth with evidence. And if the party cannot, the plaintiff, like Planned Parenthood, cannot put forth the evidence to substantiate its claim early on, before the lawsuit gets off the ground, then the lawsuit is dismissed. So that's what we filed. And instead of making Planned Parenthood come up with the evidence to back up its claims. The lower court, the trial court in this case, a judge that used to serve on the board of a company that shared office space with Planned Parenthood, a judge whose wife
let me ask you to pick it up when we come back, and we'll get right to that point about that judge and his potential conflict, it sounds like anyway. Mike Siegel in, good to have you with us. We're at the Voice of Boston, WRKO, coming right back. Back we are, good to have you with us. 1:24 it is at the Voice of Boston, WRKO, Mike Siegel in. By the way, if you get a chance, want to read a great book about talk radio, I think it is anyway, about the power of talk radio, campaigns we've done over the years. I wrote a book called Airing the Wave. That's Airing the Wave, because we're in a digital era, so talk radio has obviously changed. And this book goes back to the 90s and forward about how talk radio has been so powerful on many of the issues and my experiences in dealing with that. Airing the Wave. Hope you pick up a copy at Barnes & Noble online or Amazon or any of the other services. Glad to have you do that. You'll enjoy it. Get great feedback on the book, by the way. Meantime, we're here with Harry Miette, an attorney at Liberty Counsel, and we're going through the story about Miss Merritt, Susan Merritt, who spent 3 years in undercover work finding out that, in fact, Planned Parenthood was selling body parts for profit. Okay, so now we're at the point where you're talking about a judge that may have a conflict, but this is a case that she is fighting. You're talking about a defense of SLAPP, which means that her First Amendment rights are being interfered with by basically a nuisance lawsuit, correct?
Correct. And so we've got this motion that puts Planned Parenthood to the proof early on, and instead of requiring Planned Parenthood to put on its proof to show that it actually has some evidence for these fanciful claims, the court basically allows Planned Parenthood to just regurgitate the unsworn, unproven allegations in the complaint. So the mere allegations of bad conduct, the court found to be sufficient to require Susan to go through the process, go through a trial, which is exactly what the California anti-SLAPP law was designed to prevent. So we got that result from a judge, as I was saying, whose wife pinkified her Facebook page to show solidarity with Planned Parenthood when these videos came out. Her profile picture contains both her and the judge. So there's a picture on Facebook that shows the judge on a pinkified page supporting Planned Parenthood's case or claim against Susan Merritt. Somehow that's not considered to be a sufficient conflict, and the judge continues to handle the case.
You're handling the case at Liberty Counsel for the woman, is that correct?
Correct. We're handling the case absolutely pro bono, no charge, so that the very thing that Planned Parenthood intended to cause harm, hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees, Susan doesn't have to worry about being able to pay those.
All right, but did you ask for the judge to recuse himself?
Certainly, there have been motions to disqualify that were filed, and they have been denied, and they're in the process of being appealed.
Okay, I was going to ask you if you were. So you do have them up on appeal at a mid-level appeals court in California?
We do. Actually, it's the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's
so it's
the federal system. So that's the most liberal court in the nation, the most often overturned court in the nation is the Ninth Circuit. The disqualification motions are pending there, but that's what we had last week was the appeal in the denial of the anti-SLAPP motion was also at the Ninth Circuit.
All right, so that's still pending, and then you could take it up to the Supreme Court, I suppose, if they'd be willing to hear it. If the Ninth Circuit goes along with Planned Parenthood, could you take it up to the Supreme Court?
Absolutely. We've made it clear that we're going to take this as far as we can, and we're going to fight Planned Parenthood until Susan's First Amendment rights are vindicated and validated.
Now, what would be we have a minute left here, so what would be the criminal charge, if there were one, against Ms. Merritt? What possibly did she do criminally?
There are, in fact, 15 felony charges that California's Attorney General, a fellow who received thousands of dollars from Planned Parenthood in campaign contributions, he filed 15 felony charges Along the same lines, recording somebody without their consent, the statute provides both civil and criminal penalties. So he is saying that that was a criminal offense, and he says he wants to put Susan in jail for 11 years for telling the truth about Planned Parenthood.
Well, so this is going to go on for some time. Is this going to go on for a matter of years, do you think?
Unfortunately, I think it is. We're determined to be at it for as long as it takes, but so are Susan's enemies. So are the enemies of freedom and of the First Amendment.
Well, we're going to pursue this with you down the road. Mr. Miette, thank you for being with us. Congratulations on taking the case, and it's good to have you on the program, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you very much. Harry Miette of Liberty Counsel. They're handling that case. And we'll get your calls at 617-266-6868 if you want to respond to that, going after a woman for telling the truth about Planned Parenthood selling body parts for profit. In the meantime, we have all the latest news at the Voice of Boston, WRKO. We're back at it, 1:36 in the afternoon at the Voice of Boston, WRKO. Mike Siegel in. Good to have you with us. As we get back to your calls, if you want to respond to that conversation, isn't it interesting? A 64-year-old woman goes out and spends 3 years of her life investigating Planned Parenthood because it is violating the law by selling body parts for a profit from fetuses that they abort at their Planned Parenthood offices. And then she's the one who becomes the alleged criminal or civil violator of Planned Parenthood's rights. This left-wing maniacal control is just intolerable in every aspect of our lives. As Mr. Miette said before the break, you have a judge whose wife goes on Facebook supporting Planned Parenthood. The judge's own picture is there with his wife. You have a state that is a left-wing state, has a law that says basically this is a nuisance. If it's a nuisance suit, and in this case violates the First Amendment rights of Ms. Merritt by going public with the videos that she got, that suit needs to be dropped. And the whole system seems to pile on. That's what Trump meant about draining the swamp. In this case, it's the swamp in California. Now, of course, it's the federal court system, the Ninth Circuit. And this district judge, who will probably be validated by the Ninth Circuit, and then the Supreme Court might not even hear the case, even though it's going there. 617-266-6868. Lou in Rhode Island. Hello there. You're on WRKO, Lou.
Yeah, how you doing, Mike? This, what I'm going to say goes to probably the larger issue involved here, and something specifically about this particular case. Right now, what we're seeing around the country is that you see minorities who are complaining and liberals who are complaining about statues of Robert E. Lee and Thomas Jefferson and Stonewall Jackson. These things are totally insulting to them. They think they're holding them back from succeeding in society, and they're signs of racism, and they intimidate people. But here you have an organization, which was an organization based on the concept of eugenics, which meant getting rid of so-called undesirable people, which included black people and Asians and other people who these people considered undesirable, headed by a huge racist named Margaret Sanger. Correct?
Absolutely.
Right. Right now, what we have in this country, I looked at some abortion statistics from 2014, and they broke down the number of abortions by race. 28% of the abortions done in this country were African Americans. African Americans constitute around 13.5% of the total population, correct?
I know, but what I want to do is, your point is well taken, because most of them, in fact, double the percentage of the black population are abortions of black fetuses. But right. I want to stick to this point about this specific case where they're selling body parts of these fetuses.
And that's it. That's good too. Because what I want to talk about with that is what they should do. Is I'm surprised that he wasn't mentioning the fact, or somebody didn't bring up the point that there are two sides in a civil case, and one side gets to depose the other. If I was handling that civil case, I mean, I'm not a practicing lawyer, but I would depose them from one side to the next. I would get all their political connections. I would look at all their donations. I would look at how their money is spent. I would go after each one of the heads of the Planned Parenthood individually.
Oh, I'm sure he's doing that.
He said
this case is going on for years.
Make it public.
Yep, I appreciate it, Lou, and I thank you. And the depositions should be public. And I'm sure he's doing that. Freddie in Beverly, you're on WRKO, the voice of Boston. Hello.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, it really bothers me when you see cases like this constantly where those people who are trying to do what's right and the innocent people are the ones that are being punished, while, as you mentioned, you have these people who are clearly breaking the law and they're clearly committing, what's an atrocity, and those are the ones being protected, and they're protecting this judge who has a clear case of conflict of interest, and it's being overlooked, and it's just outrageous that this can continue to happen, and it just shows how badly corrupted the system is, that it can be used to punish whistleblowers, and which is the ones who more often get punished than the actual criminals. They're the ones that get barbecued in front of the public. They're the ones that have all the adversity thrown at them rather than the people committing the crime. They're the ones that take the blunt of the punishment, and it's really terrible.
What would happen if Liberty Counsel didn't take the case pro bono? This woman couldn't afford the legal fees.
Right, and she would be. It was just like with the what happened with the IRS scandal. These people were being punished by a government agency simply because of their political views, and they were allowed to get away with it. I mean, here you have what was the woman's name? I forgot her name. Who just pleaded the fifth with the IRS? What was her name again?
Lois Lerner.
Yeah, here she is, retired on a nice pension, and she broke the law, and she punished people for simply having a difference of opinion than she had, and she got away with it, and she's walking off scot-free.
Well, hopefully, look, this fellow Jeff Sessions is getting my dander up.
You know what I think the problem with him is? Can I give you my opinion on him?
Well, let me just finish the point first, and then
Okay,
I'll let
go
you
ahead.
do that. The problem with Jeff Sessions is, I understand Obama's Assistant Attorney General dropped the thing against Lois Lerner. They protected her. That they shouldn't have, if you want to follow the law, but they did, and that's more understandable. But for Jeff Sessions to announce about a month ago that his office was dropping the case against her is outrageous. And then they bring him in to ask about the Hillary connection to the Russian or uranium deal, Uranium One, and he hems and haws about it. What's wrong with this guy? He doesn't seem to get it.
Well, I think I know what the problem is, but you also had when President Obama was president in office, that he declared these people at the IRS completely innocent before the investigation was even over. How did he know that?
Well,
so,
he didn't.
It's just corruption goes, the fish stinks from the head down.
Who knows if he... Listen, you think Lois Lerner did this on her own?
No, she didn't. But the thing I was going to say about Jeff Sessions, the thing that I think is his problem, it's one of two things. It's either he's afraid to go up against this machine, because the corruption is so big that he's afraid to go up against it because he's afraid he's going to run into a brick wall, or he, unfortunately, like most of them, has been compromised himself, and the problem is it's like dominoes. Once one of them falls, they all fall.
Well, I appreciate the call, and I thank you, and maybe you're right, but it's unfortunate if you are, to say the least. Nick in Weymouth, you're on WRKO. Hello there.
Hey, Mike, great show, great guest, as always. Pleasure to speak with you. Funny how the name Sessions came up. That's why I called up. Last I knew, Planned Parenthood gets federal funds, thanks to Republicans. Where is a U.S. case on the side of maybe this woman or what they were doing? That's racketeering, selling baby parts, okay? That's a RICO thing right there. Where's that investigation, okay? Ain't no different than the sanctuary cities thing. Yes, you got the law. It's going to go bounce up the Supreme Court. But where's the prosecution of any mayors, sheriffs, towns administrators who actually assisted indirectly in a crime that was perpetrated on a U.S. citizen, murder, whatever, simply because they hid this citizen from ICE? Where are those cases? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for calling. You think Rudy Giuliani be sitting there on his posterior end the way Jeff Sessions is? If he were Attorney General, you know for sure Hillary would have been gone after. Giuliani pointed out 11 separate statutes that she violated, federal statutes. We're off the point of the abortion question and Planned Parenthood, but it's the same principle. There's a fear of going after the entrenched powers, and that shouldn't be there. Certainly Giuliani, who got the 5 godfathers, all of them, when he was the U.S. Attorney in New York, isn't going to be afraid of it if he were there. David in Cape Cod, you're on WRKO, the voice of Boston. Hello.
Hey, Mike, thank you very much. Mike, I just wanted to say that this has been going on for a long time. This is really nothing new about them selling body parts. I have a catalog that, going back to like 2000, so that's 17 years ago, I still have it, and it lists, they did an undercover investigation, it has FedEx receipts, it has names of doctors, labs, universities, they have order forms requesting how many hearts, how many livers, how many brains would like, whether they like them fresh or frozen, how many weeks, would you like them 20 weeks, would you like them 26 weeks, 28 weeks? There were forms in there like they were ordering shrimp. That's how, and I could bring it to WRKO's studio to see. This has been going on for a long time. This is nothing new.
You might want to send it in to Jeff and let him take a look at that.
Yeah, actually, I probably personally should meet Jeff and just show him it. And this goes back a long time ago.
Well, it's unfortunate. What word do you want to use? Tragic, sad, vicious, ugly, despicable. I mean, you could use any word you want about the way that's done. Whatever somebody thinks about the process of abortion, which is legal up to a certain point in the pregnancy, the real point here is the grotesqueness of selling body parts for a profit, which is a violation of law, a criminal violation of law, is grotesque. That's the word I would use. Bill in Newton, you're on WRKO. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good.
I've got a semantic problem with the use of the word abortion. I'm in my 70s, and I'm ashamed to say I never knew the clinical I never knew clinically and understood what an abortion was, and until I went to the internet. And I didn't realize that to perform an abortion, you have to scrape the fetus off the uterine wall, or if it's more, if the fetus is larger, you have to crush the head, you have to chop up the body, and then vacuum those parts through the cervix.
Yep.
And I just don't think I can ever use the word abortion anymore because it's too euphemistic. So, what do you think? In other words, when you use a more clinical or a more harsh terminology for abortion, I think a lot of people, even well-educated people, especially men, I don't think they know what the procedure entails. And if you use a language that's more graphic and more clinical, I think a lot of men would shy away from ever having a woman go through that because in order to, you can, in the best of circumstances, when you perform an abortion, I found out, you can puncture the uterine wall, and some women have to get colostomies. And
well, it can be dangerous. Yeah, absolutely, it can be dangerous. Well, look, there's another question here. Depending on how old the fetus is, what about the issue of pain by doing the abortion? Does anybody care about the pain felt by that human being?
Oh yeah, well, of course that. Yeah, we'd have to expand the conversation. But my point is, if men, especially, understood, clinically what it entails, I don't think they would ever, as their girlfriend or their wife, to have an abortion unless it was an extreme circumstance. So in other words, if you said, you mean you want your girlfriend to have her uterus scraped?
I understand. I'll just leave it at that. He made the point, but we'll leave it there. Glenn in South Shore, very quickly, about a minute, Glenn, go right ahead at WRKO.
Hey, how you doing? I just want to make up the disgusting point, and, poaching is illegal, is it not? And those Fish and Game wildlife guys will track you down until they get you. But human poaching, because that's what I'm calling it, is legal. There's something seriously wrong with our society.
Well, that's a good point, because it's, even right now, the president's going through the controversy of protecting the elephants and from Zimbabwe. And so he was going to sign an order that would be okay to poach them. Now he's holding back because of the outrage about that. So he probably won't sign it, and they will probably, fortunately, continue to protect the elephants. But yeah, we don't protect fetuses, do we? Mike Siegel here. Good to have you with us. The voice of Boston, WRKO. Our number. Your calls are welcome. 617-266-6868. What do you make of this? Susan Merritt being punished for telling the truth about Planned Parenthood selling body parts of fetuses for profit. We come back. Stay with us. 1:53 it is at the voice of Boston, WRKO. Good to have you with us. I was thinking during the break about if you were to envision yourself flying over the United States, looking down at us, to detach yourself and to look at what's happening and to see how a woman who spends 3 years of her life determined to expose the fact that a despicable organization named Planned Parenthood is selling body parts of fetuses for profit, that other organizations receiving those body parts are equally reprehensible, and they get protected. In the election, Hillary Clinton got protected. Thankfully, the voters saw through it, but she was protected by James Comey. She was protected by Eric Holder, the Attorney General. She was protected by Barack Obama, the President. She was protected by the entire system, in spite of the crimes Hillary Clinton personally committed. Her husband was protected as president. When he raped Juanita Broaddrick in 1972, that was not part of the impeachment trial in the United States Senate. Tom DeLay of Texas from the House, the majority whip, gave the documents on Juanita Broaddrick's rape to Trent Lott, the Senate Majority Leader, for the trial after Bill Clinton was, in fact, impeached by the House. And Trent Lott said he didn't want to use that material, because if he brought that in, they would have to have convicted Bill Clinton, because rape would be a high crime and misdemeanor, certainly. He got protected. But if it's a Republican, it's the opposite. 93% of the coverage by CNN is anti-Trump of the president. Something like 88% in the New York Times, and I'm sure the Boston Globe is the same, since the Globe is owned by the Times. Jack at the Cape, you're on WRKO. Hello, Jack.
Mike, how you doing?
Good.
You must have ESP, Mike, because I often put myself up in the sky and look down upon these earth, and I say, what's going on with these people on the earth? What is wrong with human beings? And I'll tell you what the problem is. It's gotten worse and worse, Mike. Very few people, especially people in power, especially the wealthy, are ever held accountable for what they do. They can commit the most serious crimes, from Planned Parenthood to Bill Clinton, to Hillary, to Bob Menendez, to Lois Lerner, to Loretta Lynch, to Eric Holder, to Barack Obama. Nobody is held responsible for the crimes they commit. They get away with literally murder. That is the problem with this earth, Mike. Nobody is held responsible. Planned Parenthood gets away with murder every day, every hour of the week. And when you try to rectify the situation, you know something, Mike? Jeff Sessions, I hope he resigns, or I hope he gets fired. We have to get somebody in there with guts to take this swamp out. I'm afraid Jeff Sessions is part of the swamp. His assistant, the Deputy Attorney General, is part of the swamp. Too many Democratic ties. This is the problem with this planet. Nobody, look at the guy from Zimbabwe that was just 93 years old for 50 years, subjugated his people. Look at Venezuela. Look at Cuba. Look at the countries that forced their people into slavery. Nobody is held accountable. Nobody.
Well, if it's it's very interesting. See, I think with Jeff Sessions, I'd like to think that it's because he's a gentleman, a very gentle approach. He was a prosecutor, and a U.S. attorney, but he doesn't seem to have the makeup for that. I'd like to see. Now that I look back at it, I wasn't in favor of this then, but a guy like Chris Christie would have been great. I mean, he would have been a hardcore prosecutor. Rudy Giuliani, hardcore prosecutor. And by the way, since the gentleman, Jack, thank you for calling, since he raised the point about some of those people, what would have happened if it had been a Republican former president, let's say George W. Bush, meeting with the present Attorney General, say Jeff Sessions, in the airplane on the tarmac at Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, as was the case with Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton, what if it were a Republican? And just in a hypothetical, total hypothetical, supposing George W. Bush's wife, Laura, who never would be, but let's say she were in trouble legally, and then and she's being investigated by the FBI, and then you find out George W. Bush meets inside the airplane on that tarmac with Jeff Sessions, the President Attorney General, who's investigating Mrs. Bush. What would have happened? Would it have been just walked past and nothing done, as was the case with Loretta Lynch to this point? Or would that all of a sudden have been a searing problem immediately, with the left-wing media absolutely tearing apart the former President Bush if he had done that and his wife were under investigation? I mean, it's a stretch of a hypothetical, but the point is the same. If it's a Republican, if it's a conservative, they get pounded for the same behavior as liberals who get protected. That's the way this country functions, and people need to realize that. We come back after all the latest news with Jeff Deal running for the Senate against Elizabeth Warren. Don't go away. At the Voice of Boston, WRKO.
The Voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 93.7 WEEI HD2 Lawrence, Boston. It's 2 o'clock.